Yearning to play a few rounds of Gwent. That ought to set me straight.
It's Commander's Horn episode 67. Today I'm joined by Greyboxer and Flake to talk about a tumultuous week of Gwent. The ranked season was unexpectedly extended and a patch now approaches on Thursday. Gwent Open is on the horizon for the 20th and 21st weekend of January. We're predicting another tight competition. All this and the future of the podcast on this week's episode of Commander's Horn. Live. Welcome back, my friends, to Commander's Horn, a weekly Gwent podcast. I am one of your hosts, Dane McBeard, and today I am joined by my two co-hosts, Greyboxer and Flake. Gentlemen, how are we doing today?
The name's Boxer, Greyboxer. And tonight we're talking about fictional spies, the ones that pop out of runestones. I haven't, tried my hand at, infiltrating such strategies, but I hear it's egregiously unfun to play against these spies, so we're talking spy games tonight. And to that end, we have some exciting news for folks who are pretty tired of that espionage. What's up, Flake?
Yeah, I've got some beef here. Fictional pies. I was very clearly told that my appearance here today was very heavy-handedly related to real, actual pies. Nevertheless, my name is Flake, and with my hopes and dreams completely shattered, I'm geared up for another podcast. I'm thrilled to be here to discuss the future of the Commander's Horn.
Yeah, fictional spies, real pie. No, there's pie later. Let's come on over. Yeah. You're just down the street anyway.
That's what McBeard ordered. Yeah, he placed an order for delivery pie.
Yeah, right. Pizza pie. It didn't work out, though, unfortunately.
We're so close. We were so close.
I know, we're so close, but it didn't work out. As I said at the beginning of the podcast, tried to order some food in my 5-minute break in between the stream. So just came off the stream. Here we are. Live on the podcast, and I'm just going to leave this off right now. I just want to let you know that this episode of Commander's Horn, episode 68, recorded on Twitch, on my channel right here, twitch.tv/McBearded. You can find all episodes of Commander's Horn at commandershorn.com, and you can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, other podcasting apps that pick up our feed. Send your emails, comments, questions, discussion topics to commandershornpodcast@gmail.com or tweet at us at Commander's Horn.
This week's show is brought to you by our sponsor, Cantarella's Augmented Reality Goggles. She will be your eyes, my lords. Create whatever fiction you desire. Actually, this episode is brought to you by our commandos, our patrons at patreon.com/commandershorn. Thanks for keeping the mics on and the podcast ad-free.
Lots to talk about in a kind of weird turn of events today, gentlemen. So over the last week, we found out that the season end, the ranked season end. Well, let's actually back up a little bit. The pro season was scheduled to end on the 4th of January, and it did. And then a new one started, and there was no patch for it. And then the ranked season was scheduled to end on the 8th, and it didn't. And here it is now, the not 8th, the actual date being the 9th, yes. And the patch is coming tomorrow at noon CET, 6 a.m. Eastern time. So we have an additional few days, for better or for worse. So it's some interesting news that we're going to talk about because we know what's coming tomorrow, roughly. We have a rough idea of what's coming, but we don't know the full extent of it. But generally, having 2 extra days to play on the ladder means you have 2 extra days to secure those borders, perhaps, if you are good enough to get in that top 1,000. I've been playing ladder a little bit. I played Siri Nova Eridan for 2 straight days. Had a great day yesterday. Had a very mediocre day today, and I'm working on a new Scoia'tael deck that may or may not be good, maybe just for the early ranked grind. But what are you guys playing? What are you guys playing these days?
I'm continuing with my Siri Nova full test because I think that's a very easy deck to play, and I require simple things. I'm a simple man. I'm also hoping to close out the ranked ladder push with Consume though, because I think Consume is going to be there when the patch hits. I think it's going to be a tier 1 deck when the patch hits. So I want to be really back into the groove with Consume. So I'm working on playing some Necker Warrior Consume to get prepped for the next patch.
What about you, Flake?
Well, there's two words that I like, and I like them mashed together real nice. It's called Death Wish, and we've kind of we've put it all along in the same kind of theme that all of you guys are doing, the same thing. I think everybody's kind of excited about the new card, Siri Nova, so we've made a Death Wish Nova deck that's actually been performing very well. I have not necessarily taken it to the ladder, so there's always that you can kind of hold against me, but we have played against some high MMR tier 1 related decks like Reveal, like Consume, and like Brewer, and we've actually been pretty decent with it, and we've actually had some decent results. And when I'm okay with losing, when I'm all right to have a little bit of salt added to the mixture, then we play our O'Doyle Rules deck, which is essentially a cursed Bloody Baron deck, and that's just for fun. But that's the competitive aspect is mostly Nova Deathwish right now.
Baron is O'Doyle in this situation?
He is most definitely O'Doyle, and more often than not, he does get it in the end, like the movie. But I don't want to. No spoilers. This is a no spoiler zone. Essentially all the O'Doyles essentially just bite it in the end. But nonetheless, it's just fun to say O'Doyle rules and slap down a 25-point Baron, especially against Consume Greyboxer. It's like the best thing ever.
Well, if I can just ask, if you haven't played this deck on the ladder, what have you been playing against?
This is the part of it, right? Because everybody's talking about how stale the ladder is, and it's flooded with Brewers and Consume. I've been playing against a lot of Reveal, a lot of every now and then you'll get a Spellitel. Consume is all over the place in casual. So I think what you're saying to your point, Greyboxer, is that a lot of people might just actually be gearing up for the patch to hit, or gearing up for what they think when everything's fixed will be very popular and very strong, because everybody's anticipating a little bit of a nerf to dwarves, but I don't think anybody's really complaining about Consume. So in casual, you get a lot of neckers, tons of them.
I mean, you see them on the ladder too. It's because, I mean, here's the thing. I'll say this now, and I'll probably say it when we talk about the news, but dwarves aren't being changed. I don't think anything is actually changing. There's two reasons why I think this. First of all, the comments from CD Projekt Red saying that there's not going to be any balance changes, there's just going to be bug fixes, is part of it. I think that they're going to change the Spies on Create thing that we talked about, but I think nothing else is changing at all. And the main reason why I don't think that it's changing is because we are less than 2 weeks away from a major tournament, and they're not going to make any changes, because if they made those changes according to their own tournament rules, they'd have to be playing on the previous patch anyway. So dwarves are going to be strong for the entirety of the month. And if anybody thinks that dwarves are not going to be around for a very long time still, you're just setting yourself up for disappointment. There's going to be lots of dwarves out there, I think.
I think you're right in part on that statement, but if we're going to bust into the news section, I've got a little bit more to say about the announced changes coming from Pavel today.
Yeah, okay, well, we'll lead off with that. Well, actually, this is probably a great time to go into the news, so let's go into the news, because there's some stuff to talk about. We have the extended season, we have the patch coming up, we have Gwent Open coming up. I'll talk to you right after this. All right, we'll go a little bit out of order. We'll just continue the conversation here about the upcoming patch that we know is hitting tomorrow, which is not tomorrow. Well, tomorrow, which is going to be the day that you're listening to this. I'm trying to remember that we do post this on Wednesday, even though we do it live on Tuesday. So yes, it is tomorrow. If you're listening to this on the audio podcast, it has already hit. It has been confirmed by the one and only Paul Berja that we are going to be getting a bug fix patch. It is going to be ready tomorrow, which is Wednesday the 10th, where it was originally expected to be prepared on the 8th of January, but now it's the 10th. And we are to expect bug fixes, and we are expected spies, specifically card advantage spies, which is Frightener, Yavin, Cantarella, Taller, and Udalric. I almost lost the name in my mind there. Udalric. All of those. I hope this doesn't affect my, my investment in augmented reality glasses. for Cantarella. I think people are still going to play her because Summoning Circle is still going to be a thing. Card Advantage is still going to be a thing. Bronze cards and gold cards are still at the power level that they're at. Having last card is still going to be as good as it ever was. It just means you're not going to get games where you play a spy, you get your Summoning Circle spy, the other spy is played, that gets Summoning Circled, it gets decoyed, it gets Aglace decoyed, and maybe Emir picks it up, drops it on you. Like, it's just not going to be... Heim can't pull a spy anymore. Yorveth Outlaw can't pull a spy anymore. So these are big changes. It addresses a lot of the gripes about the create mechanics and how it's bad to have so many access, such high accessibility to spies. But beyond that, I'm personally not expecting there to be any other changes to the meta. So we're going to go into Gwent Open. Dwarves are still going to be top tier. They're not going to lose a thing, really. They're just going to lose. If anything, Dwarves protected themselves against spies. They didn't necessarily abuse the spies like maybe some Skellige decks did. So I think that it's just going to be, more of the same. It's just going to be, you don't have to necessarily run Summoning Circle all the time, but I still think you do. I don't know. I don't know what you guys think about that.
I think that maybe we have a different interpretation. Now, you might know more than I do because you have a little bit more of an insider view, McBeard. So stop me if I'm just completely off base and you already know. But the way Pavel sort of left it open, he says the patch will, quote, highlight most of the problems with the game. And while that's kind of a nothing sandwich, like it says, yeah, it's going to fix everything. Like, that's a very Pavel thing to say. Like, listen, we're going to really try to do our best to fix everything. It's possible that they're leaving a little bit of design space open for a couple of potential value nerfs or something simple like taking something down 1 or 2 points. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a couple of balance tweaks in addition to hot fixes to bugs that are happening. So I wouldn't say that there's no chance, but if patch notes have already come out by the time this podcast comes out, then you already know. But I'm not gonna think that there's definitely no changes coming to everything except for card advantage spies and create.
I anticipate that there should be at least 1 or 2. And if anything, it's just kind of to save face with the just giant public outcry going on right now with some obviously problematic cards but I mean, in the grand scheme of things, certain cards definitely need a rework. And the fact that they're fixing the bugs first, obviously that's the most important thing. Because when something can be exploited to huge benefit, just earlier today, McBee, I was watching you play in Moonlight, and no matter where the Moonlight was triggered, whether the werewolf was on your side or the other side, it was getting boosted. And that was kind of an issue because that's points on either side. But I mean, I think that they will, just to sort of show that they're open to a lot of point value related or tempo based issues, that they're open to fixing those, just to sort of say, yeah, we're listening and we're getting to more. But again, it seems like they're always up against the clock, right? Nothing's fast enough and nothing's complete enough. But I mean, just addressing bugs and spies right off the bat, I think that's a pretty decent, that's a very good start, at least from the spy perspective.
See, it's tough. Like, so let's say you shave off a point off Agitator, or you shave a point off Poly, or something like that. Like, where does that stop? Like, it's not like Dwarves are the only strong deck in the game. If Dwarves go down in power, how does that change the meta? That's like even the smallest changes can be big changes. And if you shave off a few points here and you don't address other stuff, you just give way to something else being extremely strong. And it puts the pro players in a tough position because they have a limited amount of time to prepare decks. They would have to kind of realize what was happening immediately, and they're pros, they could do it, and like really just get it right. But if they somehow get it wrong, then they could be going in with suboptimal decks, and they're also getting less time to prepare than any other tournament before then because we're seeing changes before a tournament. Also, I'm going to pose this question to the room of you two. If they make, well, I mean, the chat can obviously chat about it, but I mean, if you take Dwarves down a little bit, then how does sometimes when we're in an outrage culture, there's a lot of passionate opinions about Gwent right now, and sometimes there might just always be a group of people looking for stuff wrong. And in this situation, if they made a change less than 2 weeks before a tournament, is it worth dealing with that outcry? Can they do that? I mean, they are CD Projekt Red. They don't have to necessarily, subject to change, right? At any given time at CD Projekt Red's discretion, they ultimately will always have the last say, but it actually does affect competitive. I mean, so much stuff has already been affected. Pro season started in a state of game where like there's lots of bugs, and there's, you know, balance is one thing, but the bugs is just, that's a totally different thing. But how do you go about making that change, going in less than 2 weeks and actually making changes? This is why I don't think there's going to be balance changes. And I think that they're going to package the spies on Create as a fix to the game, and nothing else is going to change until after the Open, potentially at the end of January. I think that we might not even see any balance changes till the end of January. First of all, does anybody agree with me? And second of all, how does that make you feel if that ended up being true? Greyboxer, you can lead this one off.
Yeah, so I mean, there's something, you know, calling Create not working on spies anymore a fix is sort of a stretch, because that really is a balance change, I think. So if they're gonna, you know, try to get by their own rules by saying, we're calling that a bug fix. Well, then they can just take that a step further and say, oops, we leaned on the keyboard when we set the power for, you know, this dwarven unit, for example. So there's a number of things they can do, I think, that are they're going to fall within their own rules. They might fall afoul of their own rules and then sit back and say, these are our rules. Mm-hmm. So if they're already saying we're changing Create to not affect spies within the 2-week period prior to the Gwent Open, that sort of opens the door for them to make other changes. And if those changes are valuable to the game balance and valuable to the competition and will create a better competitive environment for Gwent Open, I feel like they can make those changes for that purpose. I don't see like a full scale, like 2 pages of patch notes change coming out, but I'm expecting a couple balance tweaks and a couple of value changes in order to further the goal of Gwent Open, which is to showcase how balanced and good Gwent is as a competitive card game. And so leaving all of this stuff in there and saying it's all fine except for creating spies, I think that, you know, they should probably shut the door on a few other decks.
It just seems like semantics to me at this point, right? I mean, what's a fix versus what's a balance? If you're saying that not being able a card like any create mechanic not being able to create a spy was their original intention, and like you said, Greyboxers, oh, we leaned on the keyboard and this is not how we wanted this to happen, so this is a fix. So maybe they said, well, you know, screw it. We didn't actually intend for this to be this powerful, and it just turned out to be because it was an interaction that we didn't originally encounter in playtesting or whatever. Which leads back to the whole fact that maybe their fix, quote unquote, is the fact that their PTR only lasted less than 24 hours, and their fix is, you know, that we're gonna get and make sure that maybe this was the PTR, you know, like, isn't that, it just seem interesting in that regard? Like, it just seems like this all could have, I mean, it's a semantics thing now. Like, balances could be part of the fix too, you know? Like, if they didn't intend for something to interact or be as valuable as it actually is, then that's in itself a fix too. Like Greyboxer says, I'm with him on this. I do think that part of this little hot fix that's going to come should include some of those other, you know, quote unquote fixes to certain errors, quote unquote.
I mean, ultimately, it's going to be their decision, and whatever they decide is going to happen, and that's just how it's going to be. But, you know, there's been a couple of things that have happened that's just been kind of like not a great look for the game. You know, the idea that even though they were saying that they were going to be approaching people who were reported for exploiting bugs, like the Emir bug that's out there, which I won't go into detail about, but basically there is a bug with Emir that's exploitable and bad. If you do it, you're going to get, if you get reported and it's verified, you're going to get banned. But originally, it was said that they may not be doing that, and it's just, you know, it's a bad look. And the very, very short notice of the extension of the rank season was a bit of a bad look. And, you know, the general appearance of bugs and tooltip being incorrect and stuff like that, it's possible that CD Projekt Red just might want to lean into the fire a little bit and just say, look, we have to address this regardless of any sort of view on competitive integrity of us changing the game this close to a tournament. Maybe they just lean into that and just say, for the greater good, this is what we're going to do. We're ready. If you want to open up the oven on us and just hit us with some more flames, that's fine. But I think it's going to be better for the tournament, and it's going to be better for the game. That may actually ultimately be the stance that they take. I think that they might not. You guys think that they might. So I won't say there's no chance, but I'll say that if there's any changes, I think it's going to be very, very tempered changes. But there's two things. The first thing is, the real out-of-control deck is still Dwarves, Scoia'tael stuff. So Scoia'tael can be banned. So that means I think the tournament is going to be, it's going to be a lot of Scoia'tael bans, because it's really hard to target that deck. It doesn't have very many bad matchups. And on top of that...
Well, Axemen.
I mean,
you gotta take them deep, and then they can't win the round 3, I guess, is how you do it. But Axemen has been pretty good against dwarves from what I could see.
But I mean, can you target dwarves like that? Like, it doesn't. I don't think it's like a targetable deck, and I also think that it's just probably better off. The thing is, because it's a ban magnet, you can bring in other binary solutions, which make things kind of scary. I think. Like, I think that like if it ends up, if a deck runs away with it, it's yet to be seen. But I think that the competition is going to be really, really tight in a world where you just can't play dwarves. So we'll see how that goes. But the other thing is, if they wanted to make balance changes, it's not like it's been a short amount of time. Challenger ended on I could be wrong about this, but it was like the 19th of December, and then we got the patch on the 20th of December. It was something around that time. So it's been some time. It's been weeks. So it's not a knee-jerk change. They have lots of data they can look at, and more data than we could ever see, even from Gwent Up or anything, or even our own experiences. So they can see that data. They can see that data. I'm going to go with Star Trek on this one.
Lieutenant Commander data.
They can see that Lieutenant Commander data, and they can see that there may be some problems, play rates and win rates and stuff like that. But can they see? Because like when they make this change, I mean, they probably are going to update the game again at the end of January on top of that. So I guess, honestly, it's going to be a we'll see situation. But at least we know that spies are changing, definitely. Any final points you guys want to make? Because this is like the big news, like what we think is going to be happening tomorrow, Thursday, Wednesday. It's tomorrow. I keep getting this wrong.
Why don't we just say Thursday,
It says Thursday in the show notes, but it's on the 10th, isn't it? It's on the 10th, which is tomorrow, right?
Yeah. That's probably on me.
I'll just correct that. So yeah, we don't know what we're going to expect, but we are expecting and knowing about spy changes.
One thing I do know is I've been in touch with the guys who, and Flake is one of the, you're going to be the host. McBeard's and me casting. Wild Hunt Philadelphia.
Yeah.
If you guys have been paying attention and you follow this, it's going to be the North American live Gwent tournament. And if you pay attention to Reddit, there was a stream that was scheduled to reveal everything they're going to be doing, but they had to set that back so they can ensure full developer blessings for the event. From what I've talked to them about, they've received full blessings from the Gwent esports manager. They've greenlighted the event, and preparations are underway. So we're good to go with Wild Hunt Philadelphia. Follow the appropriate channels there. No Control on Twitter to make sure that you keep up with that. And Flake.
Yeah, big news, guys. That is coming up. So there was expected to be kind of a ticket sales kickoff event on Sunday. We promoted it on the podcast yesterday, and then ultimately No Control postponed that because they were just waiting on some kind of some official stuff. So that is going to be coming still. Definitely follow No Control for that. So that's coming up. Looking forward to being there. I'll be there. You'll be there. Both of you will be there. And many other North American streamers and personalities are expected to be there, possibly competing as well. Should be a good one.
Darn tootin'!
Yeah, we're going to have a good time down there in Pennsylvania. Now, the last thing we should probably talk about is the seasons. The pro season not being delayed in the state of a buggy patch, and the ranked season that was delayed 2 days that we found out yesterday morning. They found out yesterday morning that the ranked season will remain live until tomorrow, and anybody who spent the entire day or night beforehand securing their position had a little bit extra work to do. People who did not do that or weren't that close had more days to work on it. I am in the latter category. I was not fighting to hold a position. I was looking for a position, and I had a better season than I've ever had personally. But what do you think? It sounds like the majority of players were unaffected by this decision, but the outrage of this was very laser, like magnifying glass, like the sun through a magnifying glass, like right onto Reddit. I felt like it seemed like a lot of people had. I mean, there was a lot of people that were concerned for the people that actually had to grind and try to hold their position and ultimately have to work harder, but not too many people actually saying that. But it is a real concern, and it did actually happen to those people. I mean, what do you think happened there? What do you think happened, Greyboxer?
Well, I think that there's a lot of moving pieces here with the rushed patch that came out at the end of the year, and fixing it is not something that they can do or accomplish in an appropriate manner in a short period of time. And we're seeing sort of like, people want it both ways, but they don't want it either way, and some people just want to be critical. So you see what happens with the ranked mode, or sorry, the pro ladder, was, the pro ladder was reset in the midst of this patch, even though it was delayed in order to basically account for some lost time due to the server going down. They restarted the pro ladder season on this, essentially busted patch, and everybody lost their minds. Okay. So then for regular ranked mode, they delay it until the hotfix. Won't get a new ladder until the hotfix comes out, and everybody lost their minds. I don't know how to please people. And certainly, how are you supposed to be able to say that I'm upset that you delayed the ranked mode ladder until you hit us with a patch, the extra 2 days, and be okay with, and also not okay with the fact that they didn't delay the pro ladder patch. You know what I mean? Like, the Gwent Open qualifier was extended for a short period of time to make up for a problem with the server, but then it was cut off at the appropriate time and then restarted basically in the new patch cycle. So I just feel like, while the two situations are pretty different in terms of the competitive players and going to Gwent Open, that sort of thing, needing the qualifiers in time, I think that we as a community of Gwent players need to be able to accept that the developer is making a decision in the way it can to try to suit everybody, and it's delaying ranked ladder hurt the top 1,000, and that's probably about it.
I mean, advance notice was probably, it seemed like that was the bigger gripe, but the thing about gripes is you gripe at anything you can gripe at. If they announced it 2 days ahead of time, it still probably would have been perceived as short notice, and if they didn't delay it, that also could have been perceived. Like, there's a lot of stuff for people to latch on. That's why it's such a volatile environment right now. It seems like CD Projekt Red can't do anything right in the eyes of a lot of the social media and like the Reddit space. And even though today there was a little bit of a turnaround. Now is like making fun of the people who are putting up giant walls of text about quitting, and it flows back and forth. Like, what the cool thing is to do, like, I'm against CD Projekt Red. This is bad. And then it's like, wow, everybody's crying all the time. I'm against that. Yeah, everything's fine. So, it does ebb and flow. I think it really was the notice thing. I don't know, Flake, where do you think the ire really comes from here?
Well, it just seems like the delay, you have two different communities, right? You have the pro ladder and the standard ranked ladder, right? And it just seems that once the pro ladder was all done and over with, and they restarted it with this, what some people call a disaster patch, or the new cards, and everything's kind of just wonky and everything. And here they come with this giant Death Star laser beam of hatred, and they just fire it into CDPR, and the CDPR dispatches all their stuff and blows it away because they're like, you know what, we're going to delay the other one. And all of a sudden there's another fully armed and operational battle station just waiting to just start, dishing out laser beams of hate. And there's no way to actually please everybody. That's one thing that you have to understand. And the fact that everything's magnified by Reddit and everything's just so accessible, then there's going to be, like you said, an ebb and flow of people hating, and then haters are hating on the haters, and a whole different thing where eventually CDPR comes out and says, okay, we're going to come out and fix everything. Everyone sings Kumbaya for about, 10 minutes or so, until the hotfix comes out and someone realizes that there's a period where there shouldn't be a period, and then it's all of a sudden game's unplayable. We hate this guy, we hate that guy. What the hell's going on? Until that period becomes a comma, and all of a sudden, hey, the game's playable again. What's going on? It'll always be like that. It'll always be like that.
It will, because now we're in a position where every decision that is made, there's going to be for and against side, and there is a fairly divided community as far as there's the pro players, the ladder players, the casual players, the people who watch the pro scene and care about those players, the people who don't watch that kind of stuff and just want to just play themselves, barely play at all. There are a lot of people playing Gwent. There are a fraction of those people actually say anything about it. So it's the ultimate opinion is really kind of, if you look at a pie graph, it may actually be the dominant pie of people that are just do what you got to do. But there's going to be, the scrutiny door is wide open basically from this point forward. And I think that anytime there's anything that's a problem, it's going to be people swooping in to try to, nab that karma, being the person that says, do this, do that, acting like they're the first people that have those ideas or those suggestions.
I just find that it's the case for a lot of things, but if the minority is in the negative, they're usually also the loudest. Like if 10% hate something, they'll always represent 90% of the outcry. You know, for every bad thing, they'll seem to find each other and just sort of beat that drum. And I'm not saying that things are perfect. I'm obviously not. But it just seemed like most of the outcry was for this, and justifiably so for a lot of reasons. There are some fixes that needed addressing, but it just seemed that everything became a huge tire fire that could not be quenched, so to speak. It was insane because
a tire fire.
Well, no, it was just like, and the fumes were just getting everywhere, and you're just choking in it to the point where people are like, "Did you see so and so? He's boycotting Gwent, and he's built a hut in a village somewhere that's just remote, and he's writing his whole manifesto against CDPR." That's not what happened. Like, just someone said, "You know what? I'm taking a break for now because I've played Dwarves 4,000 times in the past 3 days." Like, that's what they're doing. It's not that they're, rallying. This isn't a la Bastille where everyone's going to go and just get weapons and storm the place. Like, people just need to chill out a bit sometimes.
Good reference right there.
Yes. History.
I think that we can as a community say something. We can say, these bugs are unacceptable. We can say that releasing 100 cards without a lot of consideration of balance of some of them at least is unacceptable. And I think that we can say, and to kind of double back a little bit on what I said earlier, the problem really wasn't so much with the reset. Do you hold the patch off or not? They tried it one way and tried it the other way, and nobody was happy. Well, the crux of the matter is that the communication was lacking, and there was no notice for the rank mode being extended, and so that's also unacceptable. So those are the kind of things that I think that we as a community can rally around and say, listen, these are the things that we want out of our developer for our, internet card game. But we also, in that same step, have to step back and say, do we want to be like every other community? Do we want to be toxic about this, or do we want to be constructive but also critical? Because you can do both. And I think that Gwen is young enough where we can be constructively critical, and I'm seeing us start to go down the other path, and it's worrisome. So I think that a lot of positive energy about this game gets lost in complaining, and the fact that we can't quite yet be as constructively critical as we should be. Hopefully it's something that comes in the future, but we need our tentpole community members to be that way.
Yeah, I mean, Gwent kind of fosters a very competitive environment because they put such exclusive rewards. The top 1,000 players of a game that fosters, at least we know for sure, over 100,000 players because of the ranking system. But it's much more than that. And only 1,000 players can get a thing at the end of every season. And it's tough. It's very sensitive. It's you leapfrog a lot when you win. You lose a lot of points when you lose. When you're up there, you have to be a grandmaster to even qualify at this point to get those rewards and to take those out of some players' hands because they just couldn't play on Monday and Tuesday because maybe they spent the weekend grinding. I get that. So Spam Hard in the chat has said, do you not think a freeze on rank 1 and 1,000 would have pleased all? They still get the rewards, and the rest of the ranks get to play for a few more days and rank up. So, I mean, that's a technical limitation. That's the thing. I think people were saying, oh, we should have just made a decision to freeze ranks or to guarantee people to get their borders if they got it at the cutoff, a way to justify that. But all of that stuff is something that, do they have a system in place to freeze ranks? Did they ever even think that they would need to freeze ranks in their life? So I don't think that they are already clearly making a snap decision because we had no notice of the extended season. So they've apologized. They've said that there is issues with this patch. They are going to fix it. They are recognizing the problems. They are listening to us. I know they're listening because they always listen. And I think that ultimately it will be fine. And when the game gets a little bit of balance and these bugs get fixed up and we get kind of a little bit of get new content, new game mode, I'm not going to say that people are going to forget about this one because this is probably having an overpowered deck here and there is one thing, but this is a fair blemish, I think, on the mind share of the most vocal people in Gwent. But I will say one more thing, and I'll stop my rant. Somebody came into my stream, said, I'm a new player and I don't understand why people are angry about Gwent. And I said, well, and I tried to explain it to him, and I realized, well, a new player probably wouldn't be part of a spy spam game, and a new player probably wouldn't be encountering dwarves every game, and a new player might not even be playing the cards or seeing the cards that have bugs involved, and it's possible that a new player doesn't even know there's a problem at all. And we've seen other posts for Reddit like, I don't understand what's going on, everything seems fine to me and I'm having a great time. So, you know, the people that are affected are small, but they're affected in a big way. But I think ultimately it's going to be fine. It's tough. I'm a hippie at heart. I want everybody to get along, hug a tree. It's hard to see people upset at, you know, I'm friends with the devs and the people who work on this game, and they all care very much. And it's hard to watch it, but I get it, you know, from my point of view, I can see what's going on, but, you know, hopefully everything gets right, you know. The last thing I want to talk about is the Commander's Horn. Commander's Horn changes. So Flake and Greyboxer, as well as in parentheses true Delta 65. I don't know I don't know. Like, it's Delta 65.
Don't say true.
Right? Don't say true. Just never say true. Okay.
That's all he wants.
Delta 65 and A- and the Thrilling. We are the Commander's Horn group now. We are going to be working on new stuff for you. The Commander's Horn podcast will be the center focal point of that. You can expect, you know, those personalities to be involved in front of the camera or behind the scenes. We have some stuff planned. We're going to make some changes over the course of this month, and the biggest part of that change is a upgraded website where we can, you know, put out some more content for you and, you know, just do more. And this is going to obviously affect the Patreon. We're going to be able to do more things for the Patreon. For the Commandos, Greyboxer hit me.
Commandos.
Yeah. For the Commandos and, you know, for everybody. So we want to make sure that we can actually kind of form, you know, a nice big positive hub full of really great content for you that maybe you might want to bookmark. Because right now, the Commander's Horn website, it does what it needs to do. We have always been primarily an audio podcast. We're big fans of radio. We are big fans of the spoken word. So we've always kind of worked towards having a higher quality audio podcast in the vein of kind of podcasts of old. But, you know, in this new world where video podcasts are still, you know, they're still podcasts, they're still like talk shows, we can do more with that. So the website needs to be revamped because it's just a storage locker for our podcasts, but there's more we can do. So we're excited to be bringing that to you. It is something we are working on. And when there's more to announce, there will be more to show you, but get excited. So from here, gentlemen, do you want to talk about the meta as it is right now? Because the rank ladder is going to flip over, and we are all going to be grinding from, you know, ranks, you know, 5, 10, or wherever you end up when you get your MMR cut in half. This might be a good time to talk about the meta. What do you guys think?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right, let's hit you with the strategy drop, and let's talk about Gwent as you go into a new ladder grind here for the first new season of 2018.
Maybe not today and not tomorrow, but someday someone will find a way to take you down.
So we can approach this in two ways. We can approach this as, what decks do you think you're going to see on the ladder? What do you think is going to be a good, solid kind of grinding deck? What do you think players are going to gravitate towards? But also, what decks might we see at Gwent Open? You know, it's easy to peg dwarves as a very, very good deck, but when you peel back the layer of the beards, what do we see underneath in the fresh tournament underbelly? I totally ad-libbed that whole thing. But what do you think we're going to see there? Like, there's a lot of decks that could be competitively viable in a situation where, you know, when you eliminate a deck out of the complete environment, all sorts of things come in. So, you know, people who are playing on Pro Ladder might be maybe not seeing that as much, but people who are scrimming against specific matchups that they think are strong outside of the world of dwarves, they could really get in there. So, I mean, we can approach this a couple of ways. Greyboxer, how do you think we should maybe approach this?
Well, I think that you can sort of take a step back. I like to say the 1,000-foot view and just take a look at what this landscape is now and what everything is tiered at, and then think what's going to be eliminated when Create no longer works on spies, right? So poor Skellige, all right, him isn't going to do it anymore. So that's a problem. A lot of these, basically every deck that's not Consume or Dwarfs is relying on Create mechanics, right? And even some, I think so.
Yeah.
And I think that you're going to have Nilfgaard spies. I think will still be really strong.
Yes.
And I think that we'll have Consume and Dwarves represented. Dwarves will still be, you know, tier 1, tier 0. I mean, those are going to be the three that I look for. Whether or not Skellige can rise from the depths and without him and still be a a solid mid-rangey deck, which is very dependable for the tournament, it could be something we see. Like I said, I think we might also see Axemen, which are strong against the Consume and Dwarf decks, in my opinion.
We might. I mean, it's weird. It's interesting. Like Heim is kind of like Rainfarn in a way that he can at least pull your own Udalric if you are playing that. But I mean, it's when the card was first revealed, the Heim card, I didn't really see it as being like this. I didn't really see the universe of like crazy spy abuse right away. But it still looked like it could have been a decent card anyway. So, but I don't know if it makes the cut anymore. Flake, what do you think is going to maybe be rising to the top of it, the tournament landscape, when you take dwarves out of the picture?
Well, that's the best part about it, right? Is that once you create that power vacuum that was always essentially occupied by dwarves, you get a little bit more of a rock paper scissors aspect, because dwarves was able to rise above that, where they were able to. Greyboxer mentioned Axeman was a decent counter to it if played correctly. If played without huge mistakes, you can get through it. Consume is going to be definitely a force, even with the fact that the Death Wish no longer triggers on round end, so you'll never have that Necker carryover. I really believe that Consume is going to have it's going to have a top tier status, but B, it's going to have different variations. It could have just the late game kind of bomb variation where you could play a Phoenix into a Slizzard, into a into a Forktail, into hitting a Necker, and then Bob's your uncle. You got a bunch of points on the board, or you just play from a pure perspective of just spamming Necker Warriors and having tons of them for late game and just sitting on your side of the board and just harvesting power as you go. I think Consume's going to be fantastic in at least one or two different variations. And at the same time, I think Bears are just going to be the way to go. I mean, Axeman is great, but Bears is, in my opinion, more reliable. If you're playing Axeman and facing more of a control deck, something that plays at least one or two different copies of Alzur's Thunder, or you toss a Scorch in there, they're going to pretty much suffer because they're going to run out of gas eventually. But Bears are reliable every time. Not to mention that the new hotness right now is not playing Renew on a Gremist or something of that matter. It's playing it on that Here Wojtek guy who then makes multiple appearances. And then it's not just one time you have to deal with him. It's at least once or twice a round that you're going to have to deal with him. Even if you get rid of him, That might be something where Grave Hate comes back into play as well. But my prediction is that possibly Muzzle gets played again to counter that play if Skellige Bears becomes an issue, or just standard Grave Hate. But I mean, Grave Hate kind of got nerfed without the Griffins playing around anymore.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me is the fact that Scoia'tael is a ban magnet. So I think that we may see a lot of very binary decks arise, like things where, like we've seen metas where Weather wasn't played very much or Weather was played a lot. So you have your opponents that are kind of teching against Weather or not teching against Weather. So if they're not teching against Weather, they can get obliterated by it. And if they over-tech against Weather, then they have bronze cards that are not that strong in their deck because they just can only do so much when they're not actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. So there's that. And of course, there's Graveyard Hate and stuff like that, which Consume is very good at. Nilfgaard can be fairly decent at it. And I think that when you look at something like maybe... I don't know what the competitive viability of Mill is, but if it's out there, you wouldn't ban it because they're bringing Scoia'tael and you kind of have to ban Scoia'tael. So you don't have to ban it, but I'm just saying that, looking from an outsider point of view and looking at the power level of that deck and what you can get done with just the blue coin, or with the red coin, I should say, how hard that is. Like, it's really, really tough. So I think that it's possible that a lot of binary decks come up and start smashing because the players have probably there's a degree of uncertainty, I think, as to what other players are going to bring in light of that ban magnet. So I am interested to see kind of how it all shakes out. The worst case scenario is everybody brings the same lineup, and it's not as exciting as I think it's going to be, but I think it's going to be pretty wild. I think we're going to see a lot of different stuff. I think the question is, how are the factions going to be represented? Because you do have 5 factions and 4 decks, and I think that you could make a case for any faction. Northern Realms may be the weakest, but I think Henselt's still very strong on the red coin. Skellige has some things going for it, but I think it's probably Monsters, Nilfgaard, Scoia'tael, and then Flex on Skellige and Northern Realms.
I actually think that Nilfgaard might actually have the most variance Nilfgaard could hit you with Mill. They can hit you with Spies. They can hit you with Witchers. They can hit you with.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all kinds of different variations of that, which are. I mean, I think right now Mill is probably the least prominent that you're encountering, but Witchers can work. Slaves and soldiers and all that nonsense, that's viable as well if you want to play a swarm style deck in that regard. And finally, Spies has just been Spies, and people say that it's just better than ever. Frankly, it hasn't changed. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 card difference than from what it was pre-patch. There's really not a whole lot of change. That's possibly even just testament to the fact that it was such a solidly built deck to begin with, and it only just got better.
Yeah, Spies are really good still. I lost to a couple Spies today. I did encounter actually 2 or 3 Mill games as well. Like I played about 20 games over the last couple days. And, it's been a lot of Nilfgaard, like a ton of Nilfgaard. Dwarves are there. Dwarves are strong, and it's hard to win against dwarves, but it's been more Nilfgaard than anything. Even though we have these listed and I have Nilfgaard at the end of the list, since we're talking about Nilfgaard, I think that they are kind of in the faction for Nilfgaard is actually in the best state I've ever seen them in. They're strong, but Spies are strong. Alchemy is strong. Mill is there. Reveal is there, but it's not. I mean, Reveal can. I don't think anybody's going to bring Reveal. I could be wrong. I mean, there are some people that we talk to on the Discord that, when I say the Discord, I'm not talking like an old man, like the Discord. I'm talking about the Commanders. You're on the Facebook. We're talking about the Commanders Horn Discord specifically. So people, they say that Reveal is actually pretty good for climbing. I don't know for tournaments if it's going to be good, but the tempo that can put out in round 1 is pretty obscene. And then there's there's Mill, and then there's like maybe some lower stuff that isn't necessarily competitive out there, but like soldiers, there's a build that was out there where it's like kind of a swarm base with slave infantry, sentries, and some scorches are in there. DG Thunder loves that deck personally. He likes Reveal as well. So, I mean, there's a lot out there. Like, Nilfgaard has so many options, and the power level is really not that disparate between the best and, the worst viable version of Nilfgaard. I think that that faction is just in really good shape. It's strong. It's not out of control. It's what we expect. And I think it's going to perform well, and I think it could be Alchemy, it could be Spies.
Yeah, from what I've seen is especially Spies is being allowed to do what it wants because I think a lot of factions are pushing deeper and deeper into these giant splash bronze card plays, and a lot of those plays are sort of solitary. They're not always doing much damage. And if most of the Nilfgaard Spies machine stays alive, then that's an incredibly viable deck that's filled with lots of high-value bronzes, especially the deeper the round goes. Mm-hmm. So, you're seeing this. This has been a trend for a long time where the round 1s are very deep because the advantage of, being able to dry pass round 2 or something. And you're seeing a deck that has a good deep round 1 like Nilfgaard Spies still being strong. Add to the fact that with the Runestone business they still have going on, there's a lot to look forward to for Nilfgaard even after that gets nerfed because of how strong Cantarella works for card advantage with the Spy archetype. Yeah.
That Runestone for Nilfgaard is it's such a pain in the ass. Whenever they get like Peter Sar Gwenlev and I've got a boosted unit, I just want to kick my monitor over. It's just like, come on. I don't like Runestone. I think slave drivers there's a lot of decks where slave drivers aren't good against, but the Runestone is just like it's confirmation bias, but it's just like the answer stone. What do I need right now? Oh, that's perfect. And it's, Nilfgaard has a lot of very high utility cards that they can get off of the Runestone. They can get Swears, they can get Peter, they can get Ox. And there's obviously they can get another Cantarella right now, but not for long. And there's probably really good stuff that I'm not even thinking about.
It's still good.
It's still good. Especially for Alchemy. Alchemy doesn't lose very much because you play the Runestone for just a good card generally. Countering Spies generally comes from Summoning Circle if you're using that. But it's not too often. You can't really rely on the Runestone for Spies anyway, but now you just never can. Just to point out stuff that's being said in the chat, talking about Duofinal. Duofinal was great. He actually he sent a raid to my stream today. He's in the top 100 now, apparently playing Reveal. So, again, wow. I think for ladder, it's probably really good. Duofinal, is one of the best players out there. He was part of Gwent Open #1. He's great. I've run into him in Poland before. He's doesn't live far away from Warsaw, and he lives in Warsaw. Anyway, he's a good player, and he's apparently Reveals very, very good. Just wanted to call that out in the chat because it seems like there is there's kind of a fence sitting about how good Reveal is, because it's had a history of looking good at first and then not performing later. It's possible that they're just decent now. I mean, it could be that they're decent now. If Duofinal is making it work, then it's probably pretty good. So let's talk about Northern Realms. So Northern Realms is an interesting topic. I think there's full test Temeria package, the Swarm style, either greater than 25 or straight up 40 card variants. I've seen them around. I feel like they're not super strong. I feel like Henselt is still maybe the king of Northern Realms right now, especially when you can control the blue coin, red coin situation, which you can in tournaments. When you can play Henselt. And, he can do some pretty dirty stuff with Winch, Nenica, pulling out 5 machines at once. Really good players can just break that wide open. I think that while Northern Realms is probably not going to be the highest represented faction out there, I think that Henselt is going to be out there anyway. And then you have your lesser represented stuff like Cursed Northern Realms and maybe Armor. I like Armor. I don't know if it's competitively viable, but I've enjoyed playing it. But I think Henselt's probably still the best. I don't know what you guys think about Northern Realms these days.
I mean, I'm seeing, Henselt as a viable option in tournaments for the reason you just said. For example, that if you can control what coin you're on, or at least have the, know what coin you're on, then playing Henselt on the right side of the coin is one of the best options. Because while I'm sure that some of the best players in Gwent can play through this, it's viable on the ladder to play that sort of way and to have a huge high tempo deck. And I think that in the new patch that comes out, anything with extremely high tempo is going to be very good in the early climbing, because you'll have the ability to just out-tempo somebody around 1 and they'll just pass on you, and they'll know they're too far behind. And Henselt does that, arguably best. I mean, there's a couple weeks ago, Delta's Consume list was doing the same thing when this patch was new. Mm-hmm. So I think that you make a good point about Henselt being the king of Northern Realms, at least in terms of what I think we will see at Gwent Open. However, Radovid's always been there. Yep. And Radovid provides so much utility in in a competitive environment where we think dwarves might be banned. And everything else is a machine. And think about all the value you'd get out of Radovid against a Consume deck, or against Nilfgaard Spies especially. It'd be really helpful to have Radovid as your leader, even if you're sacrificing some of that tempo you would get on the red coin with Henselt.
I'm on board with that statement. I mean, when it comes down to intimidation factors from a leader, I always you stare down Radovid in the face, and a lot of the times it's just a guessing game. It's a mind game. Myself, which plays a lot of Death Wish units, I mean, just staring down a Radovid, it's intimidating, because you don't want to put down 2 value units that are just going to ruin your day. And from a perspective of Northern Realms, losing double crewmen, and from a perspective of Spies, losing the 2 Impera Enforcers, like engine cards, things that really drive your tempo game, that can be a definite issue. And to speak to your point about Henselt being a great card, especially with the winches, McBeard, you talked about, it could be really a powerful leader when it's piloted by a good player. Well, this is going to be something that probably all the top tier players are eventually going to have to play when they're knocking down their Northern Realms games for pro ladder. And even on ranked, it's one of those things where even on a bad day with Henselt, you could probably get a 50-50 against an average player if you're a good player in the lower ranks as you're working your way up. So I think that Henselt is probably going to see a ton of play. And from a tournament perspective, like you said, if I like how you said you're going to have to ban dwarves, you're going to have to ban Scoia'tael. It's going to have to happen.
It will happen.
We'll see.
This might be this might be the auto win on the right side of the coin, right? In a tournament environment.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Radovid is true. Like, the fact that Radovid just exists means your opponent has to play around it, even though it's not played, right? Just the lock is out there, you're gonna get locked. So there's some things that just can't be played. You can try to bait it out maybe, but your opponent knows where Radovid is best against most deck lists. And I think that Radovid, one of the reasons why I played a lot of Armor Northern Realms over the last couple weeks, And Radovid is great for the leader, but the problem is because dwarves there's not really a lot of lockables in dwarves. Maybe they elven scout out a smuggler or a farseer or a dragoon, and maybe that's like, okay, I'll lock that because I have nothing else to really lock against this deck. That's where Radovid is the only time that Radovid's really going to be feeling that great against that deck. But without dwarves, Radovid has all sorts of great matchups, plus whatever you want to build him under. You don't have to build armor. You can build whatever you want. Radovid is a great general leader, and there are a few good general leaders in Gwent still. And I think Radovid is a great tournament leader generally. Henselt can do some pretty dirty stuff, but Radovid is kind of like insurance that you can dismantle strategy, I think.
You played Witcher 2, he's a pretty dirty man.
Yeah. He's not nice to some people, for sure. You could say that. Not that nice. Let's talk about monsters. So I've been playing a lot of Eredin Hybrid Frost Moonlight Nova. Like it's a mouthful, but I mean, there's not really a lot of ways to explain it. It's got sirens and werewolves. The value package, right? It's got sirens and werewolves. It's got Wild Hunt Hounds and Wild Hunt Riders. It's got Iris. Like it's
party mix. We're just calling it party mix from now on.
The Ocean Mud party mix. I mean, it's good. It's Eredin seems pretty good. I think that deck is actually fairly good. Consume is also very good. And then you have lesser known stuff like Dagon anything, I would say, Whispering Hillock anything, Unseen Elder anything at all. Like these are decks that are not played that often. There is like a relic build that can get some stuff done. There's you could do some stuff with like a blood-based Moonlight deck perhaps. It's not super competitive, and Ogroids are still I think the numbers just aren't there, but Eredin and Consume are kind of leading what you could do. Consume seems to be the most popular choice. I don't see a lot of Eredin out there on the ladder when I'm playing. I do see a fair amount of Consume. Maybe had 2 mirrors, but I think they might have only been mirrored because of Ocean Mud and maybe even myself increasing the popularity of that deck. But it's not really out there as I don't know how it looks from the pro player's standpoint, like if anybody else is really playing that out there when they're trying to get their MMR up for monsters, if they are. But Consume tends to be, we love the meatball, the Erika's Queen. It's a good deck. There's a lot of variants. You don't have to play with Nekker Warriors. You don't even have to play with Vrans. You can play with Forktails. You can play Nekker's Just Last. You can play with Erika's Behemoth, 20-point bronze. You could play lots of different ways. Consume is in the best version of itself I think that it's ever been in, but I think that Monsters is a little lopsided, kind of like how Northern Realms is. When you compare it to Nilfgaard, a lot of the factions are a little lopsided in power level, spread out about options. It seems like we're all Monsters players in this chat right now. Greyboxer, you played a lot of Monsters. Flake, you play almost only Monsters, and I played Monsters a lot lately. Deathwish 2018, Brewis leading the charge perhaps. What do you guys think about Monsters and how it's going to be? We talked about Consume already in the tournament, so there may not be a lot to add to it, but what do you guys think about Monsters in this upcoming tournament and the ladder?
You could sneak in an Eredin, I think, in because no one's really running clears anymore. We saw today on your stream didn't someone play a Grave Hag instead of Water Hag against you? I doubt that kind of mistake would happen, but they had clearly intended to do something other than nothing, and that was probably intending to clear the skies. So we don't see that very often. So, you're probably going to get away with a deck that carries as many effects as yours does with the, your Eredin deck. So I think that you can get away with that in a tournament setting, perhaps. I'm not sure how many deck builders, these are the best players in Gwent, how many of them are really going to be able to afford to put in clears when so much, higher value bronzes exist in the game. And that's sort of something that no one's really talked about. Because bronze base value has gone up so much, the inclusion of a card that has, like a value like Clear Skies, which is 0 or plus a couple, right? If a couple of wounded units exist that were under the hazard. I think that we haven't talked about why it's not being played as much, and that's probably because there's such a gap now between your standard like 14 to 16 value bronze and a 1 to 2 power Clear Skies. So I don't think we're going to see a lot of counters to weather in the Gwent Open, which could lead to some weather being pretty viable. And everyone's going to expect Consume. So if you kind of, if you zig when everybody else zags, then you might be able to get some wins with Eredin. Certainly at least on the ladder, I think. And you climbed really high with this deck, so good on you. And
to speak to that point, I mean, McBeard, just today, in a game today, the best line I think you said was against a Scoia'tael deck was who the F plays Drought? What are you doing? Or something along those lines.
Yeah, I did get droughted in one game.
Right, and you were not prepared for it. And that wasn't a high-level game, and they played it, and you were not prepared, and you had really nothing for it. So it could be viable, like throwing in an Aridin into in a game like that. No, if no one's playing clears, and Gravehag isn't doing it for you, then what are you gonna do?
Nope.
Yeah, you guys are referencing a game, just so you guys understand in the chat and in the podcast. I was playing against a Nilfgaard player who runestoned a Gravehag against me like early in the game, like where there was nothing in his graveyard, where I don't even think there's any silvers that could have been worse than that. Like I'm trying to think of a silver that has a lower base strength that doesn't do anything. So I think that must have either been a mistake. I don't know what he could have possibly been. Look, even Brewis by itself is better than that. So it was just a weird situation where Gravehag, I think he just thought it was Waterhag. It was funny, at least. It was a good stream highlight. But I think I think you guys make a really good point about Aridin and how Aridin might be a pretty interesting pick because it is weather. And if you got Scoia'tael as the ban magnet, it's like, okay, well, I got to let weather in or I got to just lose to Scoia'tael once kind of thing. Like what's going to beat me in that situation if I can't beat it? And also Aridin protects you because Aridin kind of has a pseudo clear. If you're running the list that I'm running with Moonlight, you can clear with your own Moonlight as well. And I think that it's very possible that Aridin is maybe a popular pick because of this exact reason. Because you can't really just go ahead and ban it because then you have to face dwarves. So, I mean, it's kind of it's the situation that I brought up beginning, the ban magnet situation. So I think that at least one player, I'll just make a prediction, and I could be wrong, at least one player, at least two players are going to bring Aridin if they bring monsters. But I could eat those words. We'll see.
Will you eat your hat though?
Yeah. How many hats do you have now? They're all eaten.
Yeah, I know. I think I said in passing, not even live, not even recorded. I think I just said if somebody hits GM with a shoop deck, I'll eat my hat, which is like the most cliche thing you could say. And then it's just like, not one but two, maybe even three GM shoopless are on Gwent DB, and I don't have to eat anymore because hats are all of my meals. So, oh well, I was wrong about shoop, I guess, as far as Grandmasters, but I don't think anyone's going to bring Shoop to Gwent Open. What do you guys think about that?
Oh man, that would be amazing though.
Would
it not?
I mean, that's a hard card to cast too.
This is the public outcry. Please, somebody do it, and just do it. Just do it.
Who would have done it, and who isn't going is maybe Freddie. Maybe Vishra would have done it.
Ooh.
You remember Vishra on stage at Challenger?
What he did? He
super
did some
swag.
It says Thursday.
He could have swagged a shoop on everybody and been like, sup.
Just like threw it out like that. Just be like,
just drop a shoop on the table and be like, yeah, we good here?
Shaggy might do it. Shaggy's known for bringing some interesting stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
If they honestly believe that it is competitive, there's money on the line, right? 25K prize pool. Like, it's one thing to play it at Gwent Slam or Gwent Together where it's just a little bit less on the line. But for Gwent Open, not just the money, of course, the ticket to Challenger, it's really going to say a lot about the cards that are in the game because these are the best players and these are the decisions they're making. Like, this is my $1,000 decision or $3,000 decision.
But, I mean, money or legend status. Like, you don't even have to win. You just have to play it and you're already a legend.
Well, winning is much better, though. I mean, you bring a joke and you get dumpstered. It's, you're just going to be known for a person who made a bad decision.
Go pay your rent with your legend status.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I swear, don't kick me out. I played Shoop. They're like, I don't even know what the hell that is. Get the hell out of here.
Yeah, it would be such a hard card to cast too. It's like, well, here comes Shoop, so one of 15 things are going to happen. So I'm just not going to even talk about what could happen.
What if you only brought Shoop decks? Like, because that's a possibility.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, this is actually like, it's not going to happen, but it's a possibility. Like, somebody could just be like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to meme. I'm going to meme all my money away.
In the same like realm of reality where like your hat eats you, McBee, that's the kind of sort of possibility.
This hamburger took a bite out of me. That one was for you, Flake. And
Thank you. I got
Simpsons fans. All right, discussion around Scoia'tael is probably a limited discussion because dwarves are the choice. Now, the leader is maybe up for debate, Brewer or Ethna. Ethna can do double Commander's Horn, double Artifact Compression, double other stuff as well. I mean, those are probably the candidates for Ethna's replayability of special cards. But Brewer also has the consistency, always pull Sator if you don't have it, always pull Polly if you don't have it, Barkley if you don't have it. So, both leaders have merit, but both leaders are definitely under the target of a ban. And then, of course, there's lesser played stuff like Hand Buff Swap or Spellitel. because we are talking about a ranked reset. We are talking about decks that could be played to rank up, but Scoia'tael really has on stage right now is the dwarf deck, skirmishers, elven scouts, Mahakam guards, Poly Dahlberg, Hattori, etc., etc. Just gigantic power plays. You over with meditation. It's one of the craziest gold cards in the game right now. Ithlin, double tremors, definitely something that could be looked at, could be flagged as maybe we should take a look at this in the future. There's just
Leaned
so
on
much.
the keyboard.
It's just such a funny thing where it's like you look at the new cards that were coming out. People are like, wow, Scoia'tael isn't getting very much. And then here's Scoia'tael like, we have everything we need. What do you guys think about Scoia'tael right now?
It makes me sort of miss Spell a little bit, right? Like there's Ithlin's there representing like super tempo with tremors, but we don't see a lot of spell decks out there. I've seen a couple, but they did poorly against my full test, so I'm sure that they're not incredibly potent right now. So I mean, my state of the meta for Scoia'tael is dwarves will obviously continue even after the patch to be exceptionally powerful. And after this patch, if we see oops, I leaned on the keyboard too hard with Ithlin, sorry, and Tremors too, delete, we might see a scaling back even further of other archetypes of Scoia'tael, which I don't think is very good for the game. I want to see more archetypes out there. And I think hand buff is just terrible. I think that you can't play a non-tempo archetype right now, and even with some cards that help give you passive tempo like smugglers and stuff like that, there's not really enough there right now, I think, to make it a viable archetype. So yeah, I want to see some bug fixes pretty soon for the other archetypes.
It would be nice to see a spell variant of Scoia'tael back in play, but right now it doesn't make sense because. And I've seen other streamers like Mark has played this every now and then. He trying to pulls it out of his hat to try to make it work. Just because I used to play it as well, and I have a soft spot for it. And you try to kind of revive it, but you get put up against decks that are gonna toss out 13 to 14 point bronze value spread over 2 or 3 units, and suddenly your Alzur's Thunder, coming out of an Elven Merc doesn't seem all that fantastic when you're doing 9 damage to a 5 spot unit, and then all this work to be done to throw down a 16 or 17 point bronze card that isn't quenned anymore. So where's the work? Where's the value there, right? Because they're just spitting out all their silver as you're wasting your life and sweating it out trying to keep up, and all of a sudden at the end of the game you're a card down and you have 2 bronze units that are pretty much at the same power level, and they'll just crap out a Scorch and your day is done, or even just toss down 3 bronze units to outvalue you. So I'd like to see it potent again, but if it's tempo or nothing right now.
What do you think would happen if, I don't think this is going to happen, but it's not out of the realm of possibility, where they're like, one of the fixes that we fixed was the problem that we had with the tech that was keeping Quen out of the game. Quen's back. that would be insane.
Fix.
That would be an insane
big fix.
It's like a new card added to a meta. Like that would be a wild one. I don't know. I think it might be a while before we see Quen back.
Rename it so
definitely
no
not
RP for some reason.
Well, I'm just saying not before we see like this tournament finish. I think that would be a critical change, but that would be funny if Quen was just back and like with the implications of that on everything at that point. So yeah, I mean, Quen being gone it's weird. I have really mixed feelings about how I feel about Quen not being around anymore. Like there's some stuff you can't do anymore, and there's some stuff that I'm happy to see gone. So it's
I feel like Quen is kind of a breakup. That Quen was like that girlfriend you had that really treated you poorly, and then she left, and you're like, God, I miss her. But do you really miss her? Like, what are you missing? Like, it's one of those things.
It's precisely that. That's what I was going to say. This is the most conversation we've ever had about the card Quen.
I mean, Quen's been big, obviously, in previous patches. Obviously, Quen is it was a card that it boosts and shields. Shielding effect is not. The shielding effect isn't even in the game anymore at the moment, but it boosted and shielded every copy of a card in your deck. So you could do all sorts of stuff with like Double Thunder Protectors and protect cards that could be immediately removed, like by Alzur's Thunder, which has been buffed as well. So a lot of engine cards were more susceptible than ever because you couldn't just Quen them anymore. To protect them and actually get value out of them. So it's interesting to think about the future that may contain Quen, or what the future of Quen would be. We could talk about Skellige to round out this conversation, though. So Skellige is pretty good still. There's there's still some variants I think that are showing up. Brand is still out there. Discard Brand is still out there. You could play Bears and Axeman is probably the most like represented, like a bear build or perhaps some sort of hybrid bear cursed situation. Axeman is out there. There is Shoop Skellige, which is, you know, Grandmaster. There is Grandmaster decks out there that make use of this because there's so many reses. You can still proc Ceres. You can still do lots of stuff that Skellige does because there's 3 different res cards between Bone Talisman, Corsair, and Priestess of Freya. So it's like you're still running 3 reses in a Shoop deck for Skellige, and you get Shoop as well to steal your opponent's 25-point card or whatever garbage happens with Shoop. So I mean, you have that, and of course there is kind of like maybe cursed or cursed hybrid. Discard is out there, maybe not as strong as it used to be. Croc's still doing things. Brand still out there. Herald representing Axeman. Est not so much. I've seen some Est here and there, but not just kind of, I think, pro ladder messing around. I've never seen Est on the ranked ladder to date, but I've seen some Est games out there kind of trying to make veterans, which got double dipped on the nerf. Not being a soldier means that they can't get rezzed by Freyas nor pulled out by Battle Maidens. Right. Means that deck kind of really took a hit. It was not the most top tier Skellige deck, but it was an archetype that just got punched in the face really in this latest patch. What do you think about Skellige these days, Greyboxer?
Well, I think Skellige's glory was always set to become, doomed after a few patches ago where it reigned supreme. But it's always been sort of well represented, I think, in the tournament scene, and as sort of like that consistent sort of carryover mid-rangey deck that it's able to get the job done. And I mean, don't forget that at the beginning of this patch cycle, Bears were a giant problem. They were exceptionally good tempo, strong powered bronzes, and they were really getting the job done. And since then, dwarves have basically done the job better and have consistently done the job better. So Skellige is kind of at this point where, okay, so we don't mid-range as well as dwarves. So what do we have? The answer is really right now, I think, Axemen. And I think that Axemen is probably the way of the future with Skellige right now, because being a less good mid-range value bronze deck isn't cutting it. So I would look for, Axemen to be the featured archetype going forward. At least, maybe not always in tournament scenes. A couple Metronos games make me, worry about the tournament scene with Axemen. Yeah. But it's possible if you play it right. And then, the new patch, people get surprised by how much value that can snowball with Axemen. So if they're just barfing units onto the board and trying to get, solitaire kind of bronze value, then Axemen can be good. And I mean, I don't know. Like, we want to see Ice Torsak better, right? We want to see this leader of Skellige become a thing. And he doesn't work right now because he doesn't work with any actual viable archetypes, which has sort of just been a problem with Skellige for a while, where Herald didn't work with any viable archetype because Axemen was so bad. So, I mean, the state of Skellige is not great, but hopefully we can rise again. I don't think this patch is going to deliver, and I think the nerf to Heim is going to hurt card advantage abuse that could sometimes high roll a Skellige victory, but Heim is still a pretty decent card. I don't think Heim's going to go away. I just think that he's not going to be so overpowered.
What do you think about this one, Flake?
I think Skellige is still the scum of the earth, and I think that they should never be a thing. No, but in a more serious note, they are bad, and I hate them. But
no bias on this podcast.
No, not at all. At least you took down the banner around the Skellige banner next to my my little overlay there. But I fully agree with GB that I think Axemen is what's gonna eventually sort of rise to the top. And that's purely to combat the fact that a lot of the way to win these days is through tempo and board presence and just spitting out units over and over and over again, and muster units in high thinning deck games. And if Consume hits the board, becomes as prominent as we might think and anticipate it to be, that might be another one to deal with it, because they don't exactly deal with weather. They don't exactly deal with removal. So I honestly believe that if dwarves and Consume reign supreme as they do, then Axemen is probably the right medication to deal with that itch.
Yeah, like the thing about Axeman, originally when I thought, are people going to bring Axeman? Like Axeman has good matchups. Axeman has bad matchups. I think Bears also have good matchups, but are beatable. I think we just had to kind of get used to how strong bronzes were, and I think that Bears just kind of stepped up and said, here's how strong they can be. Check this out. And then we all kind of got used to the new meta that we're in, and then Dwarves, again, like you said, Dwarves just ended up doing it better, but Bears are still pretty good. So, I mean, it definitely remains to be seen. I don't know if I can call it. I think that, I saw Merchant tweeted about how he thinks that Northern Realms is just not going to be at this tournament. I disagree, but I do think that the flex is going to be on Skellige Northern Realms because I think that Monsters have two highly viable builds. I think that Scoia'tael has definitely one monstrously viable build, and Nilfgaard has numerous viable builds. So I think, like, closing out the discussion, I think that Nilfgaard's in the best state a faction could be in because they can hit you like 2 or 3 different ways reliably. And Monsters needs a little bit of help as far as like the faction in general, but I think that, Aridin and Consume are pretty good. Scoia'tael, actually, I think that the other Scoia'tael decks are probably decent. It's just Dwarves kind of blur the vision on what's really going on with that faction. But I think hand buff definitely is a little on the slow side. Adding a 10-point bronze helped officers a bit, but generally it's a little on the slow side. And I think that Skellige has some real options. So I think that generally it's going to be pivoting on Skellige Northern Realms generally. And I think that Open's going to be a really tight competition. We have top 8 players have been decided. Those players that will be at the tournament, off the top of my head, here we go. I think I can remember this one. It's going to be Adzakov, Shaggy, Game King, Hannah Chan, Shmel, help me out here, guys.
Super JJ,
of course, yes. And I'm missing the last 2 people here. Koloman is the last, is the 7th participant, and then finally, I should just be looking at this. It's Sloth from Belarus. Yeah. So we have, all these players except for Shmel have been involved in a tournament previously. So we're getting familiar with these players' stories, getting familiar with what they like to bring. We know, Adzakov loves Scorch. We know Game King loves Iris. Like we know that we can see certain things, and there'll be a lot of talking points with these players. And then we have, Shmel coming back from, the closed beta days, a legend of closed beta showing up. A Russian being represented here in a major tournament. We've only ever seen Melee Man at Gwent Slam, so it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool stuff. It's going to be a great tournament. I'm very much looking forward to it. Any closing remarks here before we turn it over to the chat? We talked to the commandos in the chat here.
Yeah, I mean, I wanna ask you, like, what are you looking forward to out of Gwent Open number 3?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be the diversity of the meta. I think with a ban. I think that's probably it. And what the players are going to bring, because I think that you can't just pinpoint it. To see if the ban magnet causes some really crazy decks to crop up, to see if maybe players anticipated one thing and ended up running into another thing, or correctly anticipated something that they had, teching against in the past, teching against Mill, not running into any Mill, oh well. But teching against Mill was not incorrect, kind of thing. Like maybe just bad matchups on the bracket. But I think it's going to be a pretty interesting. I think it's going to be pretty wild as to what people are going to be bringing.
I think that the fact that the one faction that everyone's sort of concerned about is probably the one that's going to get banned the most, and it also happens to be Head and Shoulders kind of a lot better than all the other deck archetypes. So that opens up that auto ban almost. It opens up a lot more variety, like you said, because now you don't know what everyone else is going to bring, and if you're automatically banning everything, that means everyone's always usually has a plan to beat dwarves because they've done it so long on ladder. But now it's just a whole different story. It's a mixed bag, and I'm very excited because there's, like we discussed, there's so many different viable archetypes for so many different decks. So people are actually going to have to probably play a little bit more techie in terms of what they have to deal and what they have to do against. Because if it is Aridin, well, yeah, more trekkie as well in the sense of being more logical with their plays.
Pies?
Saved it. But if everyone's kind of afraid of weather, then that means that an Axeman deck and a Aridin deck means that you're gone from the tournament, or if you're not ready for weather, then those two decks are gonna absolutely crush you.
Yeah, I think that if you expect, maybe you're just fine with trying to beat dwarves, and if you lose to dwarves, okay, but then maybe you're targeting something else that you think people are going to bring. Like, Consume is a targetable deck. You can just, if you have a way to eliminate Neckers through artifact compression or locks or Swears or whatever, these
little
are good,
pings even.
little, I mean,
Especially.
like little pings like enforcers, which just like obliterate the neckers like over and over again. Like
Yeah.
there's lots of ways to deal with consume, which is one of the reasons why I think Aridin might be a fine pick. But if you can target a deck, and you'd only need to worry about that deck. Now, targeting is a strategy that not all players bring to tournaments, but some people are like, oh, Scoia'tael auto ban. Well, everybody thinks Scoia'tael's going to be an auto ban, so I'm going to just let them through and ban something else, and then target this thing, and that could be a winning strategy. So, I think it's really going to be exciting. No idea. I haven't talked to any of the players yet. Maybe I'll start talking to them, but I usually get a chance to chat with them at the event, and we're going to see what people are going to bring. Going to be pretty awesome. What do you guys think is going to come out of Gwent Open? I want to pose that question to the chat as we go into the community section here, known as Greyboxer's Garrison. Even though you're back, Greyboxer, you still have legendary status on this podcast, of course. So let's because because I have this commandos. I have commandos even when you're not here.
Commando.
I got the clip right. You didn't hear it, but I played it. So we'll talk to the community just after this quick break, and we'll see what you guys are thinking. What do you guys think is going to come out of Gwent Open? What do you think is going to come out of the patch after this? Once again, we are supported by our commandos.
Commando!
Our patrons at patreon.com/commandershorn. Thanks once again for supporting our content, keeping the podcast ad-free. We have some questions coming in from the chat. I want to address one that came in actually while we were talking before. Pretty basic question to lead things off. Abdurrahim asked, what do we think about the new 1-month seasons? This will be the first ranked season that will be only 1 month long, potentially less than a month if the season will end at the end of January, as we're going into a new season starting on the 10th. So could be the shortest season Gwent ever sees. How do you think that's going to affect climbing? How do you think that's going to affect ranking? Do you think we're going to see different breakpoints in the meta since people have less time to climb? Or do you think it's going to be remaining the way it is and just say, well, you're just going to have to put in your work twice as hard? What do you think about it, guys?
Well, I think that this is something that, admittedly more casual player than, I was top 1,000, not last ranked season, right?
It was the one before that, I think. The one with the Scoia'tael borders, right?
Yes.
Or was it? Yeah,
yes.
Because then we had the
borders.
Slizzard
I was
borders.
top 1,000.
You got there, yeah.
And,
you got there.
And that wasn't a huge grind. That was like 250 games.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very doable in a 2-month period. Considering that I admittedly get ranked ladder anxiety. And as soon as I win a few games, I want to instantly play pro ladder instead, which is what I do to chill. And I think that you have, a lot less time to grind. I think that still requiring 100 games to unlock the base meta is a huge and sort of insurmountable step for a lot of players, myself included, even though I would never hit the, faction MMR that some of these top players are hitting. And that sort of begs a whole another question that no one has asked yet, at least on this podcast so far. And I don't want to get into it, but we should talk about it perhaps on a future show about how to motivate the community behind the actual Gwent Masters series, because there's been a lot of talk about restricting the Gwent Opens to the top 8 on the pro ladder. That's extremely exclusive. It's like the most exclusive out of an already exclusive bunch. You have the subset of Gwent players who play pro ladder, the subset of that who play to get even top 1,000 on pro ladder, and then the smallest subset of all, the top 8 of that perhaps top 1,000 that are extremely skilled to get the top 1,000. So there's a very small motivation, I think, for almost everyone to get involved in the pro ladder scene. So I think that's something we can talk about in the future. But to kind of, just back into the 1 month thing, I think it exacerbates the problem a little bit. To have the shorter seasons, and but I also think that this helps development cycles, so we're not going to always have patches during the season. We might be able to see patches happening regularly every month, along with the new ranked ladder reset.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you make a good point. To compete on pro ladder, you need to be putting in 400 games, and to be 400 games takes a long time, and if you wanted to maybe place on the pro ladder, you maybe risk giving up your exclusive rewards for rank ladder. I mean, these players that are very good, they can get to the top with, they seem to make it look easy. Look at a player like Mago. It's no problem. Just pro ladder top 20, rank ladder top 20, easy, right? But I mean, we're not all Mago, so it's tougher to do that, I think. And I think that also needing Grandmaster to get into pro ladder as well is something that like would require some fierce dedication, I think. So I think it's just how many games can it take? How much harder would you have to work? Spreading it over 2 months, it's less labor intensive. You can goof off a little bit. You don't have to worry about it. But it's kind of like last minute Christmas shopping. It doesn't matter how much time you really have. It's just always about those last few days. Flake, what do you think about 1 month seasons?
I think that it's just gonna make that Grandmaster status just sparkle a little more because you have less time to get it. I think it's gonna be a little bit more of an exclusive title. It's gonna hold a little bit more, weight to it. I mean, 2 months was nice, but it almost seemed a little bit too long. And then 1 month seems a little bit too stressful. Mm-hmm. I hit rank 20 fairly early in this current ranked season, and then I just chilled because I figured, I'll have time. And to your Christmas shopping, reward, even when they announced that there's 2 extra days, I was like, I got time. Like I was at 43, and change, and I'm like, what is it, like a handful of games I got to win? Well, yeah, easier said than done, obviously, because I don't play dwarves and I don't play bears, so I was just kind of, just suffering. I got up there with Aridin, which was fun. And so to me, the Grandmaster status and whatever wasn't a big deal, but I think now it's going to have even more clout to it because of the fact that fewer people are going to get there because of the time constraints. So it's going to be nice to see. I mean, once you get there, but it's going to be a time investment for sure. It's going to put some solid effort in there.
Yeah. I also got up to 43 and change with Aridin, and I also thought, as long as I have a positive win rate, I'll be okay. But even like getting a positive win rate can be tough sometimes. So, I floated and I'm still there. And, won't get Grandmaster this season unless I just put in some work right after this podcast. But it's possible that they what if it's just like a small change? Like they bring down rank 20 to 4,200, bring down Grandmaster to 4,400. Like that's, like that 100 MMR climb where you're getting like maybe 10 to 15 points per game against the best players. You need to win like 70% of the games against the best players. Like it's a tall order. It's a tall order for a lot of people. And I think that it would make things more accessible without making it too easy, because 4,400 is something to be proud of anyway. And it may just be like that little shave of time that might be good enough, but it's possible that we see it even more reduced even more drastically. One of the reasons why I was kind of like excited to go for Grandmaster this season is because this may be the last hard season to get Grandmaster, because I don't think they're going to make it more difficult. And I think if they make any changes, it's going to cater to less time. So somebody who has time to play every day, like I do, will have an easier time getting it. So I really wanted this one. I also wanted the Aridin borders because, damn, man. I do like Aridin. I'm just showing Aridin, my Aridin Funko Pop here on the screen here if you're listening to the podcast. But I am a fan of Aridin, and it would have been nice to have the Aridin borders, but I think it is almost out of my reach at this point, as we are approaching 9 hours until season reset.
Yeah, my Funko Pop Aridin is actually out of my reach at this point. Can't go get him on the desk behind me. But I think that they mention something, way back when they announced this. I thought they said something to the fact of like, they're shortening the 1 month season to a 1 month season to match. They're updating the end of season and rank up rewards as well. So we might be able to expect some kind of change, like you mentioned, McBeard, like an adjusting of the points or an adjusting of the rewards. I don't know what they could do other than to adjust them down to account for the the increased time, or sorry, the decreased time you'll have to achieve those rewards. So I would actually be shocked to see that you still need 4,500 for Grandmaster after the change to 1 month ranked seasons.
Yeah, there's some comments coming in from the chat. Wall Weasel saying, I think they should spread out MMR more. The Aridin picture from Flake. I think we should spread out MMO more. It's really dumb that the basically jump between 4,300 and 4,500 is massive. 3K to 4K is you haven't grinded enough, more than not how good you are. And I think that, getting to 4K, you can do it with all the decks that we mentioned in that little meta roundup. All of those decks can get to 4K, I think, no problem. Well, some more difficult than others, but like even with Curse Northern Realms, like you can rock that to 4K. I think like you can do pretty well because all sorts of players are on the way, and your gains are higher. And what is that? Is that a Warhead? Greyboxer?
That is a Warhead.
They still make those things? We're dating ourselves maybe, but man.
me just
Well-
get my big league chew and just
Yeah,
join the party.
I'll grab my
proposition?
Popeye candy cigarettes or candy sticks. Sorry, candy sticks.
They came with
That's
your baseball card.
hilarious. Hot Cross Buns 26 saying, I'm pushing on pro ladder this season. It feels bad because I know it won't matter. Have a job, can't realistically push for top 8. And if I was good enough, basically he's saying the top 8 cutoff is hard. It makes it much harder for people to dedicate their time. If the cutoff was a little bit like lower, like top 16, top 32, top 64, maybe a larger tournament or a larger qualifying period is a bit more realistic, because right now the cutoff at 8 players is really kind of showing the people who have the time to really put in that grind. They're all great players. We'll never take away like players from Adzikov just being number 1 on Pro Ladder all the time. Sure, he has a lot of time to play. It shows and it reflects in the games that he has played. But he's not the player who plays the most. He just wins the most. But he does play a lot. He does play a lot. So you need to grind the ladder a lot. And but I mean, what he does is no easy feat. It's actually phenomenal. And maybe this is the tournament that Adzikov finally breaks through quarterfinals. But I mean, I think that more players qualifying, more things happening. I think for the pro season, for the pro ladder, for the pro scene for Gwent, it's going to be better moving forward. This is the year of Gwent Masters. The format has been decided. Beyond this year, all sorts of stuff could be development, and they have a year to develop it. So right now we're learning about these great players, and I think that we're going to see maybe some more grassroots stuff pop up like Wild Hunt Philadelphia, some more licensed tournaments pop up like Gwent Slam, maybe a more variety of people getting involved, more qualifying tournaments through that way, more ways to get crown points. So there's still probably going to be some variety this year, but I think that moving forward we might see more stuff, but I don't know anything for sure. What else is coming in from the chat? Kowai Kokoro saying they should host pro ladder tournaments regardless of rank increase in the scene. The moment it's not diverse and severely top heavy. Same thing about it being a top heavy pro ladder. It seems to be the general sentiment going on here, generally. So, it seems like, I don't know if you guys saw any other questions you wanted to, Shikatan saying, end the podcast and let me grind to 4.5K.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I just wanted to touch upon the fact that the top 8 cutoff seems very strict and whatnot, and I agree with that. I think that top 8 is exclusive, like it's hyper exclusive. Like you want to talk about like the 1% of the 1%. But what people need to realize, and I kind of got really excited when they announced Pro Ladder, and then you kind of dive into it. And I remember this because I was away out of the country when Pro Ladder was launched officially. So I was 3 days behind. That 3 days equated to several hundred games that I was well behind on. And that's when I was sit back and I'm like, how can I sustain that kind of thing and that kind of pace of games played? So I think that when people need to maybe just sort of change a bit what their perspective is of what Pro Ladder is, it's legitimately pro. Like this is your job, your career. This is what you want to go to, and it kind of reflects in the fact that the names that appear there, they're recognizable names, and they're the same names within the top 15, top 20, right? So it's nice to say, and like I don't want to crush anyone's dreams who have these dreams of really pushing hard and getting to the top of the ladder. That's not what I want to do, because I had those dreams as well. But in a realistic standpoint, if you have unless you devote 8 to 10 hours a day to this, you're not a pro that will get you to pro ladder, and this might be the harsh reality for some, but it's pro, because at the end of it they're pumping in thousands of games to get to those top 8. And maybe that's something that CDPR needs to address by just extending the bracket that from top 8 to top 32 or 64, and then having a tournament from that standpoint where but in my opinion it just seems like it's hyper pro.
It's hyper pro.
I mean,
Go ahead.
Not to be funny, there is a different skill set involved in grinding and being the best at 800, being the best at 1,200 games across 5 factions. That is one skill set. There is another skill set that is tournament play, and being a pro player means winning tournaments. You don't get any money for being at the top of the pro ladder. All you get is invited to a tournament where you have to compete in person. And we've seen several players really struggle on the stage after having extremely dominant and consistent dominant performances on the pro ladder. So we are seeing all these same names over and over again, but several of them are just not performing at all. And So I'm not sure that the pro ladder actually gauges how good these players are at competitive Gwent. And so while it is a pro ladder, I don't also see how the pro ladder is motivating most of the player base in Gwent to want to become more and more involved and better at Gwent, because if you're going to support a pro circuit for your game, it's to raise the game's profile, making it an esport, making it more popular. But if as soon as you get into Gwent, the reality is if you don't have 6 to 8 hours a day to be a grinder like everybody else, you're not going to become a pro. Well, that's going to turn a ton of people off who were interested from that perspective in the first place. So I think it's a big danger to have only the pro ladder really be the source of qualifying for these big events in esports, especially when the pro ladder isn't always producing the best tournament players.
I think that one side of this I'd like to take is that the people who have 6 to 8 hours to play Gwent every day, they should be the people that go to the tournaments. They are the players that are the best players that have time to dedicate to this, and they kind of want to make revenue from it, and they want to make a professional gaming career their job and assert themselves there. That's how they're spending their time, and they should be rewarded for that if they are the best players. I think the thing is the top 8 cutoff is probably something that's going to be a discussion topic constantly. It's always going to be there. There's qualifying tournaments for top 200 for Challenger. That's how Adzikov and Koloman got in that way, even because Adzikov couldn't win a ticket through Open, so he qualified anyway. Like, it's just, you can't keep him out of tournaments. He's so good. But it's just, I think that having more qualifiers and having more ways of people getting in by, showing off skill, because it's really hard to win a qualifying tournament. Some of the best players play tournaments. And by winning a qualifying tournament, you kind of already prove that you deserve to be there, because you prove that you can play in a tournament. You know how to ban, you know how to play under pressure, and you know how to play many games in a row and just be really, really good and win all your games. So, I mean, the other solution of being in the top 8 of the ladder is just win all your games, right? Just win all your games. Then you don't have to play that much. Just win every game and you don't have to play at all. But yeah, seriously though, I think that is just about, the players that deserve to be there are there. It's just more of those. There are more players than we are seeing that are dedicating a lot of time and just get to a point where it's like, well, can't get there. The disparity is too much. And they have to just kind of call it a day. Even though, you look at Tailbot, rank 9 on the pro ladder, just misses an invite to Gwent Open. He is one of the best players in the world, proven, tournaments and ladder. He just didn't make it, and he's ranked 9. Like, it's wild to think that that's kind of the world we live in, but, only so many people can go. And the other thing is Gwent tournaments are really long. There's only so much support for multi-day tournaments, there needs to be a lot of discussion around venues and how, players would be involved in larger scale tournaments, how the qualifier would work, how much of it would happen offline and online. You got to fly people in, pull in. It's not like, most of the players are in Europe generally, if not all of the players at this point. So it's not, it's not a crazy kind of thing like, flying people across the universe to get to these tournaments and that many people. But generally, I think that the people that are going should be there. More people should be there in the future. I think I can say that. I think that's how I can end that discussion. I think that's good. I think that little pro ladder discussion was a great, kind of a great result of what the community is saying. We were talking a lot about Gwent Open, and it is coming up very soon. January 20th and 21st, we'll be live. Follow Gwent Masters, follow Play Gwent for more information about starting times about that. But I will be there casting with Mogwai, Merchant, and Panda as usual. And we're expecting a very great tournament coming up. There will be one more podcast before then. And we're working out who's going to be on it. And we got an idea. We got a good idea of who that might be. But we'll probably talk a little bit more about Open as we kind of see what the patch brings us in the future. But I think that this was a good discussion. As far as you two, Flake, Greyboxer, you're both very involved in Gwent. Greyboxer, you're back into the fold. Flake, you've never left since you arrived, and it's good to have you. Flake, where can people find you out there when you're doing your thing with Gwent?
You make me sound like a fungus. You've just never left. You've just always been there.
An unwelcome house guest. Get off.
You're the moss on the north side.
And you wake up, I'm on your couch. It's the whole thing. I'm asking where the coffee's at. Where can you find me? Well, you can find me pretty much all the time, more or less. I stream pretty much daily, usually around 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's usually what I do. I usually like to play more off-meta things. And that would be found at twitch.tv/watchflake, or you can catch me on the Twitter machine at watchflake.
Right on. Greyboxer, you are back in the fold. You're on the Commander's Horn team, as we discussed at the top of the show. So we'll be seeing more of you, lots of you. We had to say tearful goodbyes at the end of October, and we are now in 2018, and you're back, and it's great. Greyboxer, where can people find you out there if you are planning on streaming in the future, or making content, or just tweeting about things? Still counts. What do you have?
Yeah. You can find me on Twitter. That's where I'm at most of the time, at Greyboxer Gwent. You can find, I'm talking all the time on the Commander's Horn Discord, which is where we talk with our Patreon backers, aka Commandos. And that was a little bit loud. Anywho, yeah, so check me out there on Discord. I do have twitch.tv/Greyboxer, and I like to get streaming a little bit more, but we're not talking with anywhere near the level of frequency of the two pros that I'm currently podcasting with. So pay more attention to their Twitch if you can. So yeah.
No, it's great. A lot of people are happy to have you back and hear your voice come through the podcast waves. What? Anyway, it's good to have you back, man. I am on me as well. We'll wrap this up here. Just want to say once again, you can find me, of course. I am on Twitter all the time. Follow me at McBeardCH. Always updates about my stream, what I'm up to as I travel around doing Gwent things out there in Europe when I get the opportunity to do so. And of course, I do stream most days when I'm home, 5 days a week, generally, at McBearded, twitch.tv/McBearded. And I've been putting out fairly regular videos these days, and the feedback on those videos have been fantastic. Seems like it's going to be something I try to keep up with. YouTube.com/c/McBeard. Just look up McBeard on YouTube. I'm there. Put a video up yesterday, put a video up today, of course, and the podcast will be up there soon. And I think that's how we'll wrap it up. Once again, if you have any questions at all, discussion topics, anything you want us to talk about, let us know. We will try to address, we always address our emails, of course, but we'll try to address some stuff on the show as well. Write to us at commandershornpodcast@gmail.com or tweet at us at commandershorn. But that's going to do it for episode 67. Wrap it up. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us today.
Until next time, this is Greyboxer.
And this is McBeard.
Best of luck
On the path.